everyone. This is Pat Lee from the Mindfulness Collective. I am on the third installment of a series of posts that are dealing with the word resilience and an attempt to reclaim resilience by getting back to the core of what resilience actually means and how we're meant to use the word. Um, I've been doing a series of posts on resilience that's kind of coming out of some of the conversations that I've been having with clients, friends, associates around the understanding of resilience, and just noticing that there is this frustration, this real frustration, and it's understandable. Like I would get frustrated with it too, with being constantly told that resilience means that you're supposed to thrive despite life's challenges. Like it's so much more than that. And it's a painful and invalidating message to say to someone that you're not being resilient because you're not thriving in spite of life's challenges. That's not how it works. So I thought it was really important, or would be really important, to sort of put a different narrative out there about ways that we could think about resilience, the ways that I tend to think about resilience, and why I am such an advocate for mental and emotional resilience skill building, and to really sort of test the waters, if you will, to sort of see, based on the feedback, is resilience still the right word to use here, or is there another word that's worth using? Like, I like resilience. I think through and through, it is the word. It just needs a little bit of reclaiming, sort of pulling it back from the claws of the way that some words can tend to go when they're overused or misused or they're applied in the wrong kind of context. So first, I want to start by just acknowledging that, yes, the ability to thrive despite life's challenges is, you Google the word resilience, and that's probably one of the definitions that's going to come up. So it's a notable way to frame the concept of resilience. My point, however, is that we need to recognize that there is much more to this. Like, this is just, it's almost like you're looking at this iceberg and it's like, oh, that's the tip of the iceberg. That's the full thing. Like, no, there is much more that lies beneath it. And it's the thing that lies beneath the surface that you really do need to understand and apply and pick apart, right? Because when we tell someone that your resilience is your ability to thrive despite life's challenges, it says to them, well, so what if I can't thrive despite life's challenges? If we're doing something like proprioceptive writing, now we say, well, what do you mean by thrive? What do you mean by challenges? We start to dig and we start to unpack, but that's not what this is about. We're going to talk about just resilience right now. So there's this really interesting article. Like, I like using resources from, credible resources that are research-based, evidence-based. And if I'm not talking about something that is conflict transformation research, I'm usually talking about something that is psychology-based research. And the American Psychological Association has some really great tools and articles on its website. One of them was a blog that I came across some time ago, that talks about building resilience. And it uses this analogy of going down a river. So the whole idea is, imagine you're about to take a rafting trip down a river. Yeah, this is my Jamaican showing, right? We have rivers that you can raft down. Um, so imagine that you're about to take a rafting trip down a river, is what this blog article sort of invites us to perceive. And then you're making that map, right? You're making that plan for doing this rafting trip. And when you look at the map, you notice that the river, it has slow water and shallow in some areas. But then in some areas, there are some unavoidable rapids and there's some turns and so on. So how do you make sure you can safely cross the rough waters and handle all the unexpected problems that will come up from time to time as you're taking this trip down this river, right? So perhaps you enlist the support of somebody else, maybe a more experienced rafter, as you're kind of planning your route, or you might rely on companionship with a trusted friend along the way or a trusted resource. Maybe you pack some extra life jackets. Maybe you get a stronger raft. All these things are related to kind of the way that we think about resilience. So when it kind of comes back to that very surface level definition of the ability to thrive despite life's challenges, we do want to recognize that the ability to thrive involves many things. Packing the right life raft, going with the right person, knowing what to do in the event of an emergency or a capsizing, all those things they're built in. So when I talk about resilience, I always talk about it as process and outcome. And what's most important when we think about resilience is what goes into the process, the ingredients that help us build and grow our resilience. So with this last post around reclaiming resilience, I just want to sort of tap into a couple of points around recognizing the things that, once again, go into what makes us able to adapt and thrive despite the challenges. And this doesn't mean that we're adapting and thriving on a level. Like it's going to be a lot of up and down and a lot of figuring things out as we go along. But each and every time when we think about resilience, I would like for persons that I engage with to really question and understand and ask, even if when we're thinking about that adaptability and that thriving and those challenges, um, it's not about you being able to power through it or to show strength in the face off or to come out of it looking really good and untouched. It is the resources, the ingredients, the skills that you are going through those challenges with that will help you arrive in a manner that resembles someone who is thriving, right? And there are a lot of things that go into that. And this is, when I talk about ReU and the work that we do and the reason why, this company started as this idea of building a community for mental health and wellness resourcing, why we talk about resourcing people. This is exactly what I'm talking about, that idea of resilience, because um, any conversation around adapting and thriving despite challenges needs to come down to looking at a few things. And I kind of put them into like 5 categories, right? Category number 1 is prioritizing our relationships. So that first category is talking about, just the ability to connect with someone else that is empathic, right? Has empathy, not sympathy, but empathy for what we're going through and an understanding about what we're going through so that they can be that person that reminds you that you're not alone, right? And research studies show that if we only have one such person in our lives, then our chances of being able to adapt and thrive despite challenges is much greater, right? So personal relationships, so that prioritization on a personal one-on-one relationship is super important. The other thing is social support, group support. So being part of a group, whether that's a civic group, a hobby group, activity, faith-based group, or whatever. Being part of a group of people with values that are aligned with you. They don't necessarily have to have the same strengths as yourself, but if they have aligned values, that group are going to help you reclaim hope and optimism, right? So whatever that group looks like, and believe me, that group does not have to look like or do the same things that you're doing, right? And this is one of the reasons why I talk about values-based community building. But that group is going to help you reclaim your hope and optimism, and they're going to be that source of social support that is going to help you adapt and thrive despite life's challenges. The third important element, I think, when it comes to thinking about resilience. And this one is a key resilience factor. I've talked about resilience factors before, things that lend to our personal, mental, physical flexibility or behavioral flexibility is to take care of our physical and mental wellness. And there, I won't go there. I'm gonna stick to the original thought that I had in my mind here. So when we talk about physical and mental wellness, it means that we need to take care of our bodies, right? We need to take care of our bodies with adequate sleep, with good nutrition, with good hydration, with movement. It doesn't mean that we all have to go run marathons or, be super flexible or bendy or what have yous, or be a certain weight or size or whatnot. It means that we simply take care of our physiology, right? We nourish our bodies. We give it the food that it needs, because nutrition is important for our brain as well as our physical health, our muscular health, and so on. But it's also good for our brain health, as is hydration, as is sleep, as is movement. The other element of that, taking care of our physical and mental wellness, is practicing mindfulness. Yes, I know I always say this, but mindfulness is super important, because it is the mindfulness that is going to help us improve our self-awareness and our self-regulation and our self-compassion skills. And whether that mindfulness comes through journaling or meditation or prayer or yoga or some other spiritual practices, but just being in that, or having that capacity, that skill, that willingness to sort of take a step back and see yourself in the present moment and quiet things down to be able to give yourself a moment, that pause, that stretch, physically and mentally, that quietness, that solitude, that ability to say, okay, not yet. Okay, now. That is the nature of mindfulness. And that is also a significant part of taking care of our physical and mental wellness, because we don't do well when we're in go, 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 right? So that's an important thing to recognize as part of our resilience processes that would lead to us being able to adapt and thrive despite life's challenges, right? And you can take a pause. The world is burning, and you can just take a moment and sit back and go, huh, all right then. There might be just one headless chicken running around the room screaming that the world is burning. Do you understand what I mean? That's the mindfulness component that I'm talking about. Okay. So the fourth aspect of this whole notion of resilience as a process is really kind of leaning into this idea that we need to find our purpose in some way. Like, you need to find your own purpose. Like, you need to define what you are and why you are how you are, if that makes sense. Purpose, right? Purpose is really important. And the thing is, purpose doesn't come from us sitting down and saying, I want to be purposeful, or I want to be intentional, or I'm planning to do this, or, I'm going to do this with purpose and intention. That's not how purpose comes. Here's how purpose comes. Purpose comes through helping others, and whether that's through volunteering or supporting a friend or a neighbor, that's where you get your sense of purpose from. Purpose is something it's a communicative experience, right? So when you do and give with others, that is how, and they give you something in return. You feel that sense of purpose, your own purpose coming through, right? When someone says thanks, or when someone feels uplifted as a result of something that you've done, that's where your sense of purpose kind of pops in. And then the other element of finding purpose is coming from your own willingness to be proactive. And when I talk about proactivity here, I mean being curious, being self-exploratory, willing to engage in self-discovery, willing to give yourself permission to disrupt your own status quo, really willing to willing to disrupt the rules that you've set for yourself, as you move towards your goals, right? Recognizing that your goals are gonna have to adapt and change as you adapt and change, right? They're never gonna be static. What might work for you 10 years ago is not going to work for you now. What might work for you when you were single won't work for you when you're part of a couple, and those kind of things, right? So being proactive and helping others is a really important way of finding one's purpose. And when you feel that you have a purpose, you get thrown certain challenges, right? When you're blindsided by certain things, the resilience comes through in the sense that you adapt, you engage in that behavioral and mental and emotional flexibility to let the thing happen, let the challenge and the disruption happen, knowing that you still have that grounding in your purpose. So I'm doing this because I'm like letting the thing happen, the disruption, you're moving with it, knowing that this space right here is who you are, right? And then the fifth element of like touching into the thing that happens below the surface of the word that we talk about, resilience, is super important. Keeping things in perspective. In fact, this is probably should be six, right? I always think about keeping things in perspective and ask for help, right? No, I'm gonna keep it as one thing. Keep things in perspective and ask for help. This really kind of touches on a number of different things. First of all, being aware of how easily, each and every one of us, every single human being, no matter how well adjusted they tell you they are, or how great they tell you they are, um, or how kind and wonderful and beautiful they claim to be, every single human being can easily fall into cognitive distortions. We can easily fall into those cognitive distortion traps. So being aware of your own propensity for cognitive distortions, the things that push you into those cognitive distortions when they happen, and just learning to work with that. It's not fix it, do away with it. It's learning to work with it, right? So that kind of comes from that acceptance. And then speaking of acceptance, another element of keeping things in perspective is to learn to accept change as a part of life. So recognizing, like I said, that things look different at different points in your own life cycle. Things look different at different points in your day. How many times have you made a plan as to like, this is how I'm going to tackle my day? And then this shit happens over here. And then you're like, well, that didn't happen for the day. But if you're clinging on to that, instead of accepting that the day is going in a completely different direction, then you're just contributing to your own pain and suffering, as opposed to doing your best to let that go and then just go with the flow that's pushing you over to here, right? So that's a big part of acceptance and accepting change as a part of life. There's also the element when we talk about keeping things in perspective and asking for help, there's also the element of maintaining a hopeful outlook, right? This is something that I'm trying my best to work on as a personal value. It is not one of my strengths, and I'm trying to make this one of my personal strengths, which is optimism. Um, and trying to maintain a hopeful outlook on life. The research tells us that people who do maintain an optimistic and hopeful outlook on life, they have better mental and physical health outcomes. And this is something that I'm trying to wrap my head around. Like, I'm not naturally a positive person. And there I go again. I am conflating positivity with optimism when they're not really the same thing. And so even like the language around that, I'm trying to adjust. So I'm trying to be a more optimistic person and to imbibe optimism as a personal strength. But that's what that comes down to here, like maintaining that hopeful outlook, which doesn't necessarily mean that we're positive all the time. Like God knows I hate to be that person that's all, oh, it's sunshine and butterflies, definitely not that person. But I do want to engage in the optimistic to say that, you know what? things are okay, and I can vision that things are going to be okay. And then another key component of keeping things in perspective, is to reflect on your experience. Reflect on your experience. Give yourself time to reflect whenever you can. And then get help. Get help and support, um, because you deserve it, right? Not because you're weak, not because asking for help is going to be a signal of your strength, but get help and support because you deserve it. Everybody deserves to have a teacher. Everybody deserves to get help and support. Everyone can stand to learn something. Everyone can stand to be supported in some way. We all deserve it. And so that is one of the things that I kind of think about as like another element of like contributing to the groundwork that builds up that iceberg of resilience, and the portion that we don't see happening um, uh, below the surface. And then we look at the teeny tiny tip of it and we say, oh, this person has the ability to adapt in the face of significant challenges. And we say, oh, that person is resilient. Yeah, they're resilient. But there's that whole lot that goes into that, right? There's a whole lot that goes into that. Prioritizing their relationships, being a part of socially supportive groups, taking care of their physical and mental wellness, finding their purpose, and keeping things in perspective and knowing when to ask for help. Hello, that is resilience, right? So I am still, I'm still asking, is that the right word? Is resilience the right word to describe all of this, right? If you are one of those persons that's frustrated by people saying, "Oh, be resilient," and you know that resilience you're talking about is, "Oh, you should have the ability to thrive despite life's challenges." I'm hoping that these series of posts will kind of encourage you to say, okay, well, what do I actually need in order to adapt and thrive despite these or this particular challenging circumstance? So, what do I need in order to adapt and thrive? Because resilience doesn't exist in a silo. It's not just a catch-all phrase for, powering through. It really is about building up the skills and capacities and resources that are going to help us from process through to outcome. So, there you have it. Resilience. Are you feeling resilient? Should I be looking at another word? Is resilience the right word? The conversation continues. But I think this will be my last post on my topic. By all means, if you got some comments, please feel free to put them in the chat below, or find yourself sending me a DM. I'm more than happy to respond to something privately, or contact me through the RIU website. Our web address is www.riumindfulness.com, and you'll find the contact page there. And yeah, I'm going to say something really tongue-in-cheek. I was going to say keep being resilient. just like piss people off. No, I'm going to say keep looking for the factors and the resources that will help you find your way to those processes, that process of adaptation, that is going to be beneficial to you. And RIU is one of those resources, but I recognize that it's not for everyone. But yeah, keep things in perspective, and don't ever forget that you can ask for help. You can ask for directions, and I'm more than happy to be one of those persons that can help, or will help point people in the right direction to whatever is to whatever is within my knowledge and skill set. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your attention and for listening, and you take care. All good.